What is up, Apex Legends people? In this video we're talking about the recent AMA session. If you guys aren't familiar, this is just where community members and the players can ask the developers questions, and the developers respond with some typically really general remarks that don't really get us anywhere and just kind of get you the answer you would assume you got. So that's what we're going to talk about. There's some pretty cool, relatively cool things that we can talk about from this. So, starting it off, someone asked about Breach Charge being added to other weapons, and they also mentioned the Hemlok in general. The developers replied by saying they're currently looking to see if the Breach Charge is a viable addition to the game permanently. I think other items have done this sort of thing, where it was initially meant to be like a temporary thing, just to kind of short-term spice things up, and then they ended up staying. I think a great example of this is the Heat Shield. I think the Heat Shield was originally going to be a short-term thing. They were going to get rid of it. It was only going to be there for a little while, but they ended up keeping it. I think it originally got introduced with an LTM. I can't really remember, though. That was a really long time ago. And the Hemlok, they said they're looking into seeing how the meta shakes out. Of course, I think the Hemlok was just nerfed today. I put out a short on that. I think they just nerfed it a little bit. But these weapons are going to change constantly throughout the entire game's lifespan. So nothing's ever permanent there. So they're basically just saying nothing new. I mean, the Hemlok's going to get buffed and nerfed forever and ever, just like everything else. Speaking of that, someone asked what goes into weapon reworks, like what factors did they consider, and they replied by saying they look at a lot of different factors. They proceeded to give us 2 factors. So I guess there's a lot of factors that we don't get to know about, but they said usage rate, that seems to be a big one. If something's not being used at all, they'll tend to want to spice it up to get people to use it. I guess the Hemlok and the RE-45 had that happen to them. The RE-45, of course, used to be a light ammo automatic pistol. They changed it to the energy ammo burst fire thing, and it gets more attention now. Same thing with the Hemlok. The Hemlok's been through a lot, though, over the years. And they also say that any cool ideas they have, so that's great. If the devs get cool ideas, they just do it. There's also been talk of LMG buffs, just like class-wide LMG buffs, Spitfire, Rampage, Devo, Elsar. I don't know how needed that necessarily is. I think those weapons are pretty solid where they're at, but we'll see what that looks like too. Another player asked about Gibraltar's hitbox. Apparently this guy, or girl, wants Gibraltar to go on a diet. Mentioned making the hitbox smaller an option. The developers basically said no. They think that his size is really part of his identity, and it's just part of the game, and it's cool because there's different hitbox sizes in the game. This has always been a controversial topic. Hitboxes are weird because you have a big character, and that's cool. You have a big character, and you have little characters, but you have to make the hitbox like the size of the character. Otherwise, when you're aiming at the character, you might be shooting through the character because their hitbox doesn't cover their actual whole model size, and you just can't do that. And they don't want to shrink the model down because, again, that just takes away from who Gibraltar is, and it's just going to be weird. So now Gibraltar's not going on a diet anytime soon. They also talked about Legend reworks in general. They asked about, basically someone asked about balancing, and the developers say nothing really specific. They did say they were looking into Legend classes and the class perks, so maybe those will get switched up a little bit. Maybe not. They will. They always do. They always get changed a little bit, but nothing. I wouldn't expect anything super crazy to come out of that. The first bullet point here, we've talked about this and realized at some point we'll have buffed and refreshed the entire roster. I think that's something really important to mention. I think they call it power creep, but over time, it's really easy to continually buff things to try to get something as good as the other thing. So you buff a weapon to try to get it as good as the other weapons. You buff characters to try to get them as good as the other characters. And while Respawn devs do buff and nerf, generally, since the game's creation, the characters have gotten stronger. Things have gotten better. The original characters are stronger today than they were at the start of the game. In general, legend abilities and weapons are a little bit stronger than what they started with. And I think that's a really big long-term issue with this game, honestly. I don't know how you really fight that other than a lot of nerfing. I think that, you get to a certain point where it kind of takes away the core of the game, and it kind of creates something else where we're playing like an exaggerated form of Overwatch, and we're no longer playing that Titanfall 2 inspired battle royale that Apex Legends started with. I think that's a really big topic that almost just needs its own video to discuss completely, because at this point there's been such a long timeline of legend changes and reworks and additions to the game that that's such an expanding topic. Legend adjustments in general. Now we have some clues as to what's going on. We can expect some buffs for Pathfinder and Bloodhound, some tweaks to Conduit and Wraith, some adjustments to Crypto as well. Mirage buffs were hinted at, and there wasn't really anything specific there. There's been talk of Altar being nerfed a little bit, and again, all these things that I literally just said are really general, and that's just the way it is until we actually data mine the leaks. So that's all we got for now. I will say that I think all those legend changes I just said are generally a good thing. Being a Bloodhound main myself, I think the character is really weak. I think Bloodhound is completely garbage compared to some of the other characters out there today. The Bloodhound pick rate is bottom 10 or bottom 5 characters right now. I think Crypto is down there too. I think those characters are just nowhere near as good as some of the characters with abilities that allow movement, like Octane, like Wraith, like Valk. Those characters have just really strong abilities that help give you such positioning advantages that they've just become popular. They're picked a lot. Now, I went to the comments just to check some things out, see what was going on, what the community thinks. Someone did say that the scan legends are bad. They're garbage, and they could use some love. I totally agree with that. Someone also talked about scaling down Gibby and how that wouldn't change his identity. Honestly, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one, buddy. But, to each their own. We all get our own opinions. I think Gibby should stay fat just because it's cool. And there are also some positive comments about the breach mode on the Hemlok, which I'm in support of too. I think, I hope it doesn't last forever, but I think it's been fun for a while, and I'm okay with them keeping it and trying it out a little bit longer term, other weapons too. Anyways, that's all I want to talk about in this video. You let me know what you think about this stuff down in the comments. We will see you later.